Why, hello. So I am Deena Merlen. I'm an entertainment attorney with the law firm Reavis Parent Lehrer. And this is the production team panel. And I am going to have a wave of introductions roll down to my right before we get started, starting with the gentleman to my right.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Thanks to Neal and the whole staff behind the film industry mixer. I'm Alex. I go by AD Calvo, and I've been making feature films since 2007. Have made 4 features here in Connecticut. The first one was called The Other Side of the Tracks, and it played on Showtime for 2 years and was picked up by 20th Century Fox for international television rights. And then I did a small film in 2009 that has still not been released. We're kind of waiting for that to happen. I can come back to that later. And then did 2 films back to back in the last 2 years. The 2 trailers you just saw. Worked on those with Magda, Ellyn, Scott. And those will be released early next year by Anchor Bay Entertainment. So, and we got a couple of, thank you. So I'll turn it over to Scott.
I'm Scott Kittredge. I was a co-producer and second unit director on those last 2 films, The Midnight Game and House of Dust. Prior to that, I was a second unit director on Alex's film, The Melancholy Fantastic, and first.
You were first AD.
First AD, sorry.
It's all right.
Apologies.
You start to blend after.
Yeah, and then a PA on
you kind
Other
of
Side
helped
of the Tracks.
The grip and lighting.
And grip, yeah. Grip and lighting PA on that. And then prior to that, I did 4 short films, The Terminal Conversation and Snacks and the other 2.
We met at the Rhode Island
Yeah.
International Film Festival back in 2006?
Yes.
2005.
2005 or 6, so one of those years. We met there. He was ramping up for The Other Side of the Tracks, and I came on board then. Yeah.
I'm Ellyn Vander Wyden. I do some producing, some line producing. I actually do a lot of locations, production management. I've done several films in the last few years, but I actually come from a different world of still photography, actually, and kind of wound my way around doing production in films after many, many years of producing fashion shoots in New York. So I had a heavy I'm a photography major, so I come from that end, and with my production knowledge, I've kind of just slid into films in Connecticut.
I'm Magda Grover. I was the production coordinator of The Midnight Game, and I have a varying background, but in the past few years I've worked on a lot of features and shorts locally and in New York. So thank you everybody for coming.
Great, and thank you very much. It's really a privilege to be here, and I want to echo Alex in thanking Neal and Alexander and the small army of other people that come together each year to bring the film industry mixer to Connecticut. It's really been awesome over these last 6 years. I hope it goes on a long time. Can everybody hear us?
Yes.
Yeah? All right. So while I do hope to talk about the creative end and maybe a little bit about the horror thriller genre, I think I'd like to start, with your permission, with some of the nuts and bolts. First of all, you want to make a film. How do you get the money? Do you mind if we start with a little business? Get the business out of the way, because without that, you ain't got nothing. All right? So I'm going to turn it over to a man who has actually managed to bring in the money to put out some amazing feature films. And there are various models for film finance. We spoke about this briefly, and I'd love to have you share with the crowd how you make it work.
So back in 2004, I got into filmmaking, started making some shorts. I saw a window of opportunity opening up with digital filmmaking. And that was kind of my pitch to investors at the time. It was there hadn't been a whole lot of films made using digital acquisition at the time. There were a couple like Tadpole and Monsoon Wedding, but it was still largely a time when you told people you were making a feature using digital. They kind of looked down on the project or didn't think it was like a real feature because it would be shot digitally, which I always thought was kind of silly. So that's kind of the thing that lured me into filmmaking, was the opportunity presented by the digital acquisition 24p cameras like the DVX-100A that were acquiring footage that looked a little bit more like film. I had been in software for 16 years prior to coming into film, and I was in my mid-30s and kind of was reevaluating exactly what I wanted to be doing. And so the timing is a big portion of fundraising, because you're always fundraising for some type of endeavor. So market conditions play into that significantly. I don't know if you guys watch Shark Tank. Does anybody watch that? That's really like so amazing to watch that show, because you learn how ideas are presented to an investor community and the kinds of questions you're asked. And I think it's a great tool to, I really enjoy the show. I like watching it because you can learn a lot of insight into pitching to an investing community. Because a lot of those kinds of questions are the questions you'll be asked. So you really have to have a unique pitch. Today, if I was to try to greenlight a film today, my first film, I really couldn't use the same pitch I used back then, because everybody has a DSLR now, and digital is on your phone. So I would have to come up with another kind of marketing pitch. And everything goes into that, from attachments to your technology to obviously your story and how you're positioning your film. It all comes down to a package of what you're trying to get financed. So, is that?
And you primarily worked through the model of private placements?
Yeah, yes.
Because one of the things, I'm just curious if people don't mind a show of hands, not that I can necessarily see them with these lights in my eyes. Is there anyone here who's been using crowdsourced funding for their work? Indiegogo, Kickstarter? That a couple? A few, okay. Okay, because that was something that we also had talked about on the phone the other day as we were preparing to come speak to you fine folks. I took one of our clients' films to South by Southwest earlier this year, where I'm happy to say got the audience award, yay. And 35% of the films that were at South by Southwest had at least some crowdfunding. Our client, for example, had used it just to help create a trailer. A lot of clients I have will maybe use it to make a sizzle reel for a television property. I don't know that many who have actually been able to raise the money you need to really do your whole project. But it's sort of an interesting model, so those who haven't checked it out, I suggest it might be something you look into as well. But the more traditional model, which
would be
is
private investors.
Private investors.
On my first film, I was one of the investors as well. So that helped a lot, because it was like, it gives people a comfort level to know that you believe in your project enough to put a sizable amount of the investment.
Yeah, the question is, do you have skin in the game? I think that's a very good point.
Part of it.
Yeah.
But I haven't, on my last three, I haven't been an investor. So.
All right. Now, as we've talked a little bit about money coming in, just a quick, I think it's really important we have at least a moment to talk about money going out and tax incentives.
Yes.
I don't know how familiar people here are with some of the laws in Connecticut, and a really exciting thing some years ago is when Connecticut recognized that by having tax incentive programs in place, it would make this an attractive state and start to lure the filmmaking industry over the state line into
And back to the timing thing, that was really a critical piece of the puzzle that helped me greenlight my first film, was at the time Connecticut's push to do the 30% tax credit. Because really that amounts to almost a third of your budget. Not quite a third, once you factor in things like maybe you didn't spend the entire amount in Connecticut, and then the resale value of the credit is not 100%. sometimes between 80 and 90, somewhere in that vicinity. So it's really a critical piece of financing for independent film, is tax credits.
Really is. I remember some years ago when Connecticut was sort of the new player and had made a very big entry by being, really, frankly, more competitive than what else was out there for the most part. And I was negotiating with a union official out in New Mexico where a client was going for a shoot. And I made reference to the fact that I was so excited about what Connecticut was doing, and this guy was all smarmy. He's like, "Oh, they're just copying us." He was really grouchy about it, too. Is there anything anyone else would like to add to the topic of the tax incentives in Connecticut?
Other than the fact that it's been, for feature films, pulled. I don't know if everyone's aware of that, but feature films was pulled as of July 1st.
Yeah. There was a tension when, states are a bit cash-strapped between offering the incentive where you're losing some revenues, but the idea is, but you're making money in other ways. And my understanding is the thought was, well, gee, when the film crews come in, it's not creating jobs and long-term gains for the state. It sort of comes in, they do their thing, they leave, whereas television is actually setting down roots and making, building facilities and creating jobs that last, as is the digital media industry. So those are being supported and nurtured. Although many would say that analysis is a little bit short-sighted where film is concerned, because there's so many ancillary activities. When the film crew comes in, you've got your caterers, you've got, just your locations, you've got your hotels, you've got all sorts of industry going on. And even if it's project by project, this industry is made project by project. Many people have an entire thriving, complete career in which they're not a W-2 employee. They are working from project to project, and it creates a day and a week and a month and a life. So I think that is something important to recognize as well. Anything else?
Plus, not to mention, there's films like Mystic. People are always going to Mystic, Connecticut for Mystic Pizza. I mean,
Great point.
And not only that, the Indiana Jones movie, people are going to New Haven now because it was shot there. So it's also they're missing the point. In the bigger scheme of things, if people say that it was shot in Connecticut, people want to come and check out the tourist things. That's the latest thing. We are actually on a committee, most of us on this panel, that are trying to save the tax credit incentive, and we have we're asking people to sign a petition. Kelly Crest has them. So if you guys really want to save the tax credit, we ask, getting on a soapbox, but we ask for people to please sign this. It's important. It's our livelihood. I mean, we want to make films. We want to stay in Connecticut. I don't want to move to New York, so.
I moved to New York. I came back to Connecticut. Okay? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Since we did just touch on location, this might be a good moment to go to location. Connecticut obviously has been a very appealing location for lots of work, and I know Ellyn can talk to this point, and I think, Magda, you two have worked on location scouting. So let me just throw it out. Okay, so I think the questions might be, how do you find it? And once you find it and the director loves it, how do you get it? How do you secure it? What is involved in putting down roots to have a location for your shoot in Connecticut? Anyone?
I think it depends. My brother-in-law runs a real estate company, so I have access to sometimes really nice houses or mediocre houses. I think it's just making a connection with somebody, a rapport. You talk to them. Some people want to be compensated, some people don't. It depends on the budget of your film, but usually you can promise to we were not going to distort anything. We're going to showcase the nice things. We shot in a Victorian house for 5 days. They gave us carte blanche. It was an amazing experience. We transformed this house into you couldn't tell it was a Victorian masterpiece. Then there's all these. The beauty about filming in Connecticut, and I think anybody outside of Connecticut kind of misses it, is that we have the beach, we have the snow in the winter, we have the foliage. We have so much to offer that people are you can go from New London to I don't know, Torrington, and it's a vast of different locations, different venues, different everything that you can do. I think it's just having a good rapport with somebody, talking to somebody, and what are the details? Okay, well, we don't want you guys filming past midnight. Okay, so you coordinate that, and you just try to put your best foot forward, and the quality of your work is going to show for it. I mean, that's what I think.
Often, too, for locations, you're the very first face that the production shows. So if you don't have, if you're going out there first to look for locations, people are usually intimidated by the movie scene or completely enthralled with it and say yes, but they don't really know what's going on or what will happen. So you have to. Sometimes you're there to babysit and ensure them of what the process will be once you're there filming. Fees can go from, like Magda said, nothing. People will give you things to extraordinary amounts of money for locations, depending upon what they are. And again, they often see dollar signs when they see a film, and often the dollar signs are not here, the small films that come to Connecticut, so you have to encourage them to be able to let you have their property. There's a whole lot of ways that you protect their property once you get there. Then you have to start looking for, once you're there at the property, how is this property going to sustain this large crew that's coming in? And as far as silly things, as far as parking and where people are going to eat, and how are they not going to be all of these people at this one piece of property, but not actually in the movie because it's not big enough to to keep them all. Where do you put them then? Sometimes you have to put them a mile down the road. There's lots of kind of
You get creative.
yeah, you have to be very creative, and that's often the headache. Once you finding it's the fun part. It's
Yeah.
getting a whole crew in there to make a movie that becomes more of the headache then.
Also, to add to that, for a midnight game, we met with the mayor of Wallingford because we were going to be shooting primarily in Wallingford. So that helped sort of ease all the different departments, the police department and the fire department, if we needed to get to them, or if something came up down the road. You know, we've talked to the mayor. The town's aware that we're here shooting this film.
Definitely make them aware that you're there.
And being really nice and respectful. I mean, I'll just give you a short anecdote concerning the movie Spider-Man. Not Spider-Man 2, the amazing Spider-Man 2, with which Magda has some involvement. But the original Spider-Man movie has a very key scene, you may recall, in which the Roosevelt Island tram hanging over the East River is involved, and people are dangling from a web. And there was a big problem because Roosevelt Island is home to many, many people who are physically challenged. There are some long-term rehab hospitals there where people go. And even though that it has Roosevelt Island has a large population of people with disabilities, its subway stop is not ADA compliant. One of the only ways the people have to get off Roosevelt Island and into Manhattan is on the tram. And the film crew came in and they got the permit and they got the right to use the tram for days and days and days to the exclusion of others. And the governing body on Roosevelt Island said, okay, we'll get a bus, and it will run once an hour, and you'll have to wait for it, and we'll go to Queens, then over the bridge, and eventually get to Manhattan. And this was a huge hardship on the people, and they just were up in arms, and there was a lot of bad publicity, and they basically drove the film crew off the tram and off the island several days earlier than planned. And it was an unfortunate thing because I think when you get a location, it's really, like meeting with the mayor and also just being a really good corporate citizen. Being thoughtful, saying, okay, we're going to make sure that we're not monopolizing it. If you have a need to use the tram, we're going to take turns. There are ways it might have been worked out without turning into kind of a nasty brawl. Now, I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just going to make one comment on locations, which was kind of unique. With the Midnight Game, I had gotten an email about 2 years ago from an owner of a historic house. She said, "Oh, I know you're making movies in the area. I think you should come check out our house. It's from the 1800s. It's a historic home that had been moved from downtown Wallingford to the outskirts of Wallingford." And I immediately, when I saw it, I was like, "Wow, that house is beautiful. This wraparound balcony." So kind of threw it in. Filed it in the back of my mind for an upcoming project. And sure enough, that was a dream location because the owner was great. I still am friends with them to this day. And we've always been very conscious of locations and respectful of people's property and realize that you're coming in and you're kind of invading and taking over people's space. So it's really good to be aware of that and respect people's personal property and leave the location in, if not better condition than when you arrived. And that helps create an environment for all future filmmakers. So it's kind of a pledge we all need to make to each other as filmmakers to respect people's property so that we can continue to make films in Connecticut and leave a precedent of quality productions that respect private property and public property.
Yeah, another very good point. Maybe we'll veer off on a little tangent here, since we were talking about getting permission to use locations. Let's go right to permissions, rights, releases, and clearance. This comes up all the time, and all too often at our firm, we'll hear from a filmmaker who's finally, they've got the great film, and they've got the distribution deal that's coming in, and they want to paper the deal, it's going to happen, and then it ends up, ooh, you just didn't actually have the permission you needed for that music or that key, you know, something in that key scene or that appearance release for that person who ended up being so important, and you know, it's going to scuttle the whole deal, potentially. And it's at that point when there's so much riding on it that if you then go and seek permission, you are at a tremendous disadvantage in terms of negotiations. Someone's got you over a barrel. So I wonder if you all want to just talk a moment about permissions, rights, releases, clearance, that sort of thing.
I'm actually working on this with Scott right now in our upcoming film, so maybe
Yeah,
Scott, you can jump in on that.
Well, currently on the feature end, we're looking for comics, books, and collectibles. And I come from a background, I used to work at Hasbro, so I approached them to sort of do a blanket clearance of like Transformers, G.I. Joe. But I can't go after things like Marvel because then I'll have to get permission from Marvel and Hasbro. It just would make things, more complicated and things like that. And then I guess since my background in graphic design and sort of interest in production design from my short films early on, I did this short film, Terminal Conversation, and the main character had a baseball hat. It was a Red Sox hat on. And so, was that short film going to ever go anywhere? But I figured, well, let me try and see if I can clear this, because maybe if it did go somewhere, like you mentioned, this could scuttle the deal. So I called up Major League Baseball and I said, I'm making this independent short film. It's micro, no budget kind of thing. And she said, oh, okay, well, we just need this from you, a few reasons why, what are you using it in, in the script and stuff like that. And we'll give it to you for $1. So, it didn't hurt to ask. And now I have this neat little contract with them. And I found out later that for features, they want like $30,000, $40,000, to use that. So I was fortunate, but just it doesn't hurt to ask is the best thing. Yeah.
You also have to be careful with going back to locations if you're going to be shooting any train tracks or anything like that, or on a highway. If you get a Metro North sign or the MTA or anything like that in your shot, they'll come after you for a licensing agreement, and those don't cost $1. Yeah. They're a ream of paperwork 4 inches high, and they could cost thousands of dollars. So.
So you want to make sure that all the trains that you film are moving very fast.
Yes, so it's
no logo.
So you can't see the logo.
You don't see any of that. Even a garbage truck or anything like that. And then as well as getting releases on your background and your extras, like you had mentioned. So you should always have a stack of them in your kit and be ready to get anybody that's within your shot or walking past that doesn't want to clear or whatever to sign off on being in the film.
Because I worked on The Apprentice, and the job I was on was clearance, which is literally, let's go into the middle of Times Square and start filming, and our job is to track every single person that passed by that camera, because if we didn't have a release, they would not show the footage. So no matter if Axl Rose was getting into an argument with somebody, or whoever, like, if we didn't have the clearance, they wouldn't let us. So I tell everybody to, make sure you have your paperwork, make sure, even if they're saying, well, I'm not going to be in the film, I'm just here to watch my kid, get them to sign a release anyway, because you never know, they might cross the camera or something. Even if it's background scene and you're seeing their back, just be covered.
What if you refuse to sign? What do you do then?
Kick them off set.
But then you use the new...
Have them stand.
Just shoot a different angle.
Yeah, do something.
Well,
you have to look out for yourself.
And you wait for the new plug-in that replaces all the background faces with your grandmother.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you've picked somebody up and you don't have the clearance you need, it's like, edit.
And then when it comes to the art department, they'll what they call Greek something out. So if you have a cereal box, a Kellogg cereal box, they'll change the name on it with just some tape and other things to change the real name of things into different names.
Sometimes it's as easy as just covering up one or two of
Yeah.
the letters or the
Right.
logo
Yeah.
of another product.
Have a good
You can
artist.
certainly do that, and then you can also get, free stuff for House of
Product
Dust. It's hard to really get the true product placement like money per se, but products to put in your movie, that's most of the time very easy to get. And we had skateboards and stuff in House of Dust, and they sent us all this free product that was like way over $1,000 worth of product. And, at the end of the production, we gave it out to the art department who were skateboarders. So, they were very happy.
The only time you get in trouble if like people in your movie are eating soup and they're dying from eating the soup,
Yeah.
then you'll have a hard time getting Campbell soup
I
to sign up.
worked on a film and we had the Farmer's Cow as one of the sponsors, and they brought us so much milk. There was so much milk on that set, and apple cider.
I like it.
Yep.
Yeah.
The whole truck pulled up and like unloaded cases of milk for us.
We had that with Snapple.
So Magda made reference earlier to shooting in Times Square. And did you say that was for toddlers?
That was for The Apprentice.
The Apprentice. So one of the things I noticed, and I'm going to focus on Magda, but this is actually true of every panelist here, is that people seem to have great breadth of experience. I don't see anyone who's just wearing one hat. They all have worn many, which is really interesting. And in Magda's case, I'm also seeing a lot of, there's the film and there's television, a lot of television too. And I'm seeing that I've got her IMDb listing here. And in terms of some of the positions, I say, okay, she's handled the camera operator, assistant camera, she's done assistant director, second, first, then I see location scout, I see production assistant, production coordinator, PA, all kind of post-production, production. But again, this, and so while I'm seeing this across the board, I wanted to put Magda on the hot seat for a moment, because I think a question that a lot of us have, how do you get into the business? And, how do you get in? Where do you fit in? And in Magda's case in particular, where do you want to go? What is all that?
I ultimately want to be a producer, and my personal opinion is if I'm going to be a good producer, I need to know what every department does so that I can have a conversation with that department instead of being the producer that's like, oh, just tell him you need this, he'll sign off, whatever. Like, I really want to understand when somebody comes to me, like, I need clothespins. Well, why do you need clothespins? Anybody who works in the G&E department needs why you need clothespins. So that's why I do it. I honestly grew up never thinking I could ever be in film because I lived in Connecticut. And then the film industry training program started and I took a class and it's a wrap. Here I am. I've worked on every single project I can think of to work on. I've worked with a lot of people in this room. I really believe to be a good producer, you really need to know what everybody's job function is and to do it. My passion is, I have a logistical background and administrative background, so I can do the AD, I can do production coordination, and I also like doing camera because I like to shoot. Who doesn't like to take a pretty picture or document something? So I think, whatever it is that your interest is, I think you should try to see how it fits into the film industry, because people are like, oh, I can't do film. I'm like, well, you know how to do makeup. Just find out what it is that's so special about the film makeup. Or, people who like to design things, like graphic designers, people are like, oh, I can't do film. Yeah, you can. Somebody needs to make this bottle look like something that's an original kind of water or something. So it's taking what you already know and applying it. And I think everybody should just, learn as much as you can so that you're good at that skill set that you want to be. So hopefully I'll make a good producer when I get there.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I guess another thing I'd like to ask about, because another area where my legal practice is focused is employment law, labor law. There's a lot of press right now about misclassification of employees. Is that person really an intern, or is that person really a violation of the minimum wage? And is that person really a freelancer, or is that a misclassified employee who should be having withholdings and benefits? Which is a very big and important topic, but kind of stepping back to the be nice when you get locations, be nice to the people in the community, let's talk about the team, the people who are working, because it's notoriously hard work. People want to be in this industry. People would work for free. People would pay you for the opportunity to work in it, to just get in the door and get started. And people can be worked to death. I mean, there are people, you work a whole day shift and then a night shift and then it's a day and a night shift, and 3 days later maybe you'll get some sleep. So can we talk for a moment about how you address that, and do you balance it? I mean, you mentioned you really try to be kind and be careful.
I'm a bit older and I have a family, so I'm very cognizant of the workday. And I came from software where, people think long hours are just in the film, but let me tell you, there's people sitting behind computers right now coding away at Google for 13, 14-hour days too, and that can get pretty mind-numbing. So I've been on that end of the employment side. So I'm very cognizant of keeping, I believe in working smarter, not harder, and that's important.
You sound like a good
Just
guy
kind of
to
be
work for.
efficient. Efficiency is a key thing.
Yeah. I got the 10 minutes hand signal a moment ago, so I know we're wrapping up. But let me just ask a very important question, because we started with, how do you get the money? Because without the money, you don't get to make your film. Now you've gotten the money, you've made your film. Distribution. Anyone?
Distribution is, it's a difficult thing. It's harder to get the money back than even to get it. So, as you embark upon your film endeavors and you go raise money, just keep in mind that getting it back will be even more difficult. In my case, with my first film, I had cast a girl from the show Lost, and my lead actor was from the CSI Miami. Those are two household name shows that were known in Europe as well. So that made a big difference. Films got picked up largely because of them. And the film looked kind of bigger than it was in terms of budget. So the name actors using name actors is pretty key. Using a good sales agent is pivotal. A producer rep sometimes, but the sales agent I'm using now is a company in Toronto called Raven Banner Entertainment, and they're kind of a boutique horror sales agent, kind of one of the best out there right now. I would have never got the Anchor Bay deal without having a good sales agent that wanted to take on the films. So you have to go through the process. You can't make your film and then send it to your distributors, because what that does is distributors automatically assume that if they're seeing your film, first of all they get a big stack of DVDs from other films that have been made. If you try going that way, and this is what I've been told, and I take it at face value, that you have to go through a reputable sales agent, because there's a process to the business, and distributors will assume if you go to them directly that it's already been passed on by many of the sales agents. So you really just want to work the process the way it's supposed to.
And I'd also add is also retaining the urge to just throw a trailer out there. Keep all those assets and all those things, little pellets of information about your movie while you're searching for a sales agent or trying to get into a festival close to you, because those are going to be opportunities down the road for your media and to sort of track stories and interviews and things like that.
Sometimes the trailer
help in
can
the sale.
save you if it's good. Chances are the trailer's not that good if it's cut by the filmmakers. It will hurt you much more than it helps you. That said, if you have a good trailer, it could bring attention to the film if you're in a position where you might not otherwise get attention.
But putting it, putting it out there right away and not knowing, what your opportunities are, especially if you haven't gone into this festival or that festival.
And
Because once you open that window,
festivals often won't even take you if you've been shown anywhere else. That's what they get you with, that they want you to premiere at their festival. So
Great, thank you. I'm not sure if we have time for questions or not. I'm not sure if there's someone who can tell me.
Where's Catherine?
Well, does anybody have?
Catherine, do we have time?
All right, perfect.
Insurance.
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 Very
Insurance.
important.
I can talk about insurance.
And then they got insurance and the whole world opened up.
Yeah.
Everybody wants.
For your production insurance, yeah,
Good question.
it's easy to get. It's not extremely costly. You definitely need it. It opens up a lot of locations for you for insurance. It's vehicles, your crew, workman's comp. It's definitely will open up and make your project a lot more real, for lack of a better word. It legitimizes it.
Great. Yep.
So now that we know production insurance is important, how do we get it? Like, where do we go to get that?
There's
There's
agents.
Yeah,
There's
film
agents. There's
emporium.
entertainment insurance, basically, is what you would look for.
Film
Yeah, you can just
emporium.
Google that. There's
Yeah.
a lot of
There's
places
a lot
that
of
do
them.
that.
And shop around because some rates are better than others. Some people are really easy to and do everything for you, and some you have to do legwork yourself.
State Farm offers a decent one.
Great. Well, I think that's probably about all the time that we have. Thank you all so much for being with us, and we've really enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Don't forget tax form, save the credits.
Kelly, you should have
Kelly.
had a sandwich board on.
Thank you, Deena.